You're listening to the Health and Happiness Podcast with Travis Kemper and
Lauren Maxwell. Each episode, we share easy to implement strategies to improve your health, happiness, and overall quality of life.
Our bodies change our minds change our behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. Amy Cuddy. How's it going, Travis?
Good. I journaled.
Yay!
I also finished that book that I wasn't that into this morning.
Oh, really? Was that the fiction one? Or the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait. Yes.
Yes.
I have to think. Fiction. It still screws with me. I also bought all of the weight equipment for my basement, so I'm excited.
That's super exciting.
Yes. And we're supposed to get a bunch of snow for the next 10 days, so I'm going to go skiing on Friday.
Is that going to be your first day of the season?
Yeah.
Yay! Oh, I can't wait to hear how that goes. Awesome.
Yeah. So, well, that's the plan, as long as it does snow.
Yeah, well, it's so far looks like it's going to snow.
Yeah, it's supposed to snow for 10 days straight, so we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
How's it going?
It's going good. It's been like a whole 2 days since I've talked to you. But I got
2.5.
2.5, sure. I got my 2022 planner, which, like, if you know me, I freaking love planners. They're like my favorite thing ever. But this one's awesome because it has a whole section for like goals and things to focus on each page. So like one part of it is like the weekly planner, and then the other part of the page is like your goals and focuses and stuff like that, things you want to accomplish. And I love when planners have sections like that because I feel like I'm able to really see my goals and be more consistent with them. Last year, my planner didn't have a section like that, and like the year before it did. But last year was the first time I like really didn't have that section. And I felt like I kind of lost track of a lot of like non-work related things I wanted to get done. So I'm super excited that I have that section back. My planner this coming year is awesome. I can't wait to dig into it. I know it's so nerdy, but I just love it.
Okay. Whatever works for you.
Exactly, right? We're also supposed to get a bunch of snow in the next 10 days. I'm super excited. So our next snowboarding day is going to be Monday, January 3rd.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm super excited for that. And then I guess the only other news is we're going down to Phoenix for the next 4 days for Christmas. So Christmas is on Saturday.
Oh boy, I'm dreaming of a hot Christmas.
But we're gonna come home on Christmas Day, so we'll be back
nice.
for a white Christmas Day. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There you go.
So what are we gonna talk about today, Travis?
Power positions. And are they really effective, or is it just a bunch of baloney?
Good question. I actually hadn't really like heard of the phrase or the term power positioning until you and I were chatting about this topic, like, I don't know, 2 days ago, 2.5 days ago, whatever. Yeah. I mean, like, I knew what it was, but I didn't necessarily, oops, I dropped my pen. I didn't necessarily like know it was called something. I knew like posture had something to do with like how you feel, but I didn't know there was an actual like research basis for it or like name for it. You know what I mean? So anyway, I was really interested in the research that we pulled up for this. So one of the first studies we have is a 2012 study that looked at whether postures people maintained affected their leadership perceptions. They had 42 college-aged participants between 18 and 43. These 18 and 43 years old, sorry. These participants were randomly assigned to one of two groups. One group where they were to imitate a picture of a model with a negative slumped posture, and one where they were to imitate a picture of a model with a positive posture, sitting erect with a lumbar support pillow, and then they held these respective positions for 1 minute. They measured their leadership perceptions by basically showing them a black and white photo of a rectangular table that was lined with 9 total chairs, 1 at the head of the table, and then 4 on each side. And the participants were to circle where they would sit. And their hypothesis here was that those who perceived themselves as strong leaders would sit at or closer to the head of the table. So either the head or like right next to the head rather than like at the very end of the table. The results confirmed that the individuals who exerted a positive posture would rate themselves in a higher in leadership than those in the negative posture condition. Participants in the positive posture condition consistently chose the chair at the head of the table or those nearby rather than choosing those further along either side of the table, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I never walk into a room with a bunch of chairs at a table and think, where do I want to sit? You just grab a seat. But yeah, maybe if I did a power position before, I would choose a different seat.
Yeah, it makes me think about like when we walked into PT school on the first day and like choosing where you sat, like whether you sat at the front or whether you sat at the back. Although I never necessarily thought about leaders sitting in the front. I always thought it was nerds because that's where I sat always.
Oh, yeah. So I sit there because I'm highly distractible.
Yeah.
So I got a seat in the front because if there's people in front of me, I can't pay attention.
I sit up there for very similar reasons. Like it's just easier to pay attention. Yeah. Although sitting next to you, I don't know if I would say it was easier to pay attention.
Apparently, I'm distracting.
Just a little.
A 2018 systematic review aimed to see if adopting expansive power postures had any effects on emotional or affective states, mood and evaluations, attitudes, and feelings about the self. 55 studies were included in the systematic review, and they found robust evidence that postural feedback influences self-reported affective state, specifically reported as increased feelings of power. They also found evidence to support that postural feedback influences emotions and self-evaluations. Postural manipulations affected participants' specific emotions, affect, mood recovery, retrieval and recall of positive versus negative memories, and self-evaluations. They demonstrated that the effects of postural feedback on affective variables clearly extend beyond causing people to feel more powerful. So basically, they found a lot of different stuff.
Yeah,
and
that's
it was all positive.
Really interesting. Like even the recall of positive versus negative memories.
Yep.
Holy cow. That's pretty cool. We also have a Forbes article here that kind of talks about some controversy in this world. So the main person in a lot of this research is Amy Cuddy. That is the quote that we had at the very top. She's kind of like the leader in this particular field. So in 2012, power posing was all the rage. Amy Cuddy had a big TED Talk, which we will link to in the show notes, on power posing. She suggested that our body language governs how we think and feel about ourselves, and thus how we hold our bodies can have an impact on our minds. In other words, by commanding a powerful stance, we can make ourselves actually feel more powerful. The evidence of power posing came from a study that she completed while at Harvard, where participants sat in either a high power pose or a low power pose, which is like leaning inward with their legs crossed, for 2 minutes. Amy Cuddy found that those who sat in the high power pose felt more powerful and performed better in mock interviews than those who had not. Her research had two major findings. The first was that the people who sat in those high power positions felt more powerful than their low power pose counterparts. But the second was that the high power posing actually changed their body chemistry as well. The study suggested that those who adopted high power poses demonstrated an increase in testosterone and a decrease in cortisol, which is the stress hormone. All of this research from like her very first articles and her TED Talk was later attacked by other social psychologists, labeling power posing as pseudoscience. Because at that time, her research didn't pass what was called the P-curve test, which is some like specific statistical stuff that I admittedly don't know that much about. But anyway, it was interesting because this Forbes article was talking about how some other scientists were even like, they had followed her research and they knew the benefits of it, but they were still afraid to speak out on her behalf. So it went through this like whole phase of being like really under attack and really like, I don't know, it just like lost all of its power because people were attacking it without necessarily like looking into it more. Anyway, so later she published a new academic paper, which is actually the systematic review that Travis just talked about, demonstrating the effects of postural feedback, which she started calling postural feedback instead of power posing or power posturing, to try to get out of that like attacking bunch of people. But anyway, she showed that it was actually indeed real. And yes, this one passes that P-curve test that everybody was so upset about. However, the link between power posture and hormones has yet to be replicated.
So tangent here, Lauren. Scientists are bullies.
Yeah, apparently.
It's funny. So the way that I see this is, you know, academia has it kind of brings a certain person to it. Very intelligent, very,
Sure.
a lot of times not hugely extroverted. You know, if you're doing a lot of research, you're in your own space, whatnot. And a lot of these people believe certain things. We can see this all through culture. They believe certain things, and they believe that, you know, a lot of them will take up this opinion that you can't change what is going to happen in your life and you are powerless. So that is why I feel like this probably got attacked, because she is saying, hey, look at this. I have research that shows that you can affect change in your own life just by changing your posture for 1 minute. You can drastically improve the way you feel about yourself. And then they flipped, and they're egotistical people, because we're all egotistical people at some level, and they weren't able to admit that they were wrong, and I'm sure they still haven't admitted that they were wrong, but they didn't like basically that it proved their entire theory of life wrong. That's my guess as to why this happened. But then they bullied everybody to the point that other scientists were afraid to stick their necks out.
Yeah,
which is sad.
Really unfortunate that like, I don't know, that like cognitive dissonance that gets created when like you believe something so deeply and then something proves you wrong, and then you're not willing to make amends with that. Yeah, with that dissonance. I mean, the way to get over, I guess there's two ways to get over. In my mind, there's only one, which is like follow the new evidence. But I guess the other way is to just cling to your old belief, and that doesn't really serve anybody very well. But unfortunately, that I guess can be an easier way of going about life.
Yeah, powerful people can admit that they're wrong. And people actually respect when you admit you're wrong.
Oh, absolutely. I think that makes you way more respectable. Like, that is the process of growing and changing, is learning new things, admitting you're wrong, and then moving on.
So there's evidence in healthcare. You know, like people sue every day in healthcare. There's evidence in healthcare that something like, God, there's people that sued, something like 50% of them or 60% of them, don't quote me on the stats because I haven't read this in a while, in research studies and interviews and things, they said they wouldn't have sued if the physician just said sorry. But when you work in a hospital,
chills. That gave me chills.
But when you work in a hospital, you're never supposed to say sorry. Like, you're coached not to say sorry.
Dang.
It's a weird conundrum though when you look at that science. But if you say sorry, you're at fault. So then if I say sorry, Lauren, I screwed up and it was a significant thing, you can sue, and it's like,
Right.
well, you already have a confession.
You already
win.
said you're guilty, essentially.
Right, but then you're less likely to sue, so it's an interesting
That's
policy
so
to take up.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so back to power posturing. So a 2015 study tested whether engaging in expansive versus contractive poses before a stressful job interview, preparatory power posing, they called it, would enhance performance during the interview. Participants adopted high power poses or low power poses. So again, high power, expansive, shoulders back, chest out. Low power is closed off, chin down, slumped in your chair. So they took up these power poses or non-power poses and then prepared and delivered a speech to 2 evaluators as part of a mock job interview. As predicted, those who prepared for the job interview with a high power pose performed better and were more likely to be chosen for hire.
That is awesome, because interviews are terrifying for me. I don't like them. I think it's awful. And they're very stressful for me. So to know that there's something as simple as like holding a certain, I'm not planning on doing a job interview anytime soon. I love my job. Just let's note that. But if I ever go into a job interview again, knowing that I could use something as simple as like power posing before the interview, that's huge. Like that would probably play a big deal for my life, because I hate interviews.
Yeah, positive psychology is real. I go into interviews knowing that I'm the best candidate for the job and that I'm interviewing them, not vice versa, to make sure that I want the job.
Yeah.
So
I imagine that you would be great at interviews.
I flip the script a little bit, because I do. I'm extremely picky when it comes to jobs, and I have been for most of my life. And I've always been good at interviews. So I guess you get confidence when you've had as many jobs as I have.
That's true. Yeah.
With the traveling and everything that I've done.
Yeah. Did you have to interview for all of the like travel positions that you had?
Yeah, you have phone interviews.
Wow.
Yeah.
That like gives me heart palpitations just thinking about all the interviews.
It's not bad. It's really not bad.
The hardest interview I ever had was for PT school. Honestly, the jobs that I've had, the interviews have been like, the companies that I've like interviewed with have been so chill, and they don't even feel like interviews. But PT school, man, forever will just live in my mind as like my worst interviews ever. They grill you.
I think you and I interviewed with the same person, if I remember correctly. You cried and I bombed that part.
Yeah, I did cry. You're right.
Yeah, and I nailed the rest of mine though. I think you nailed that one by crying.
Maybe. I don't know. I think I nearly cried in all of my interviews that day. I was so stressed out. But that one in particular, like that one interviewer was...
Yeah, he was tough.
It was really tough. He like didn't even crack a smile a little bit. I was like, I don't know if I'm doing well or if I'm not doing well.
He asked me why he would want me to treat his mother.
Yeah, I got his grandma. Why I would treat his grandma. And I was like, actually, that was probably one of the questions that I was okay with. It was all the other ones that I was like, I don't know. Anyway. Back to power posing. We got lots of little tangents on this one. So there was a 2013 study. I thought was actually pretty interesting. Well, all of them were. But this one looked at whether the link between expansive postures and power are universal. So they found that this link is not universal, but depends on people's cultural backgrounds, which like makes total sense. I work with other cultures, and it's very easy to see that like the things that are considered like strong and like that a leader would do are just different based on their values. So anyway, they looked at 3 types of expansive postures, and these were examined during the studies. So they had an expansive hands spread on desk pose. They had the expansive upright sitting pose, and then they had the expansive feet on desk pose, which I like immediately was like, huh, that's interesting.
I think I'm really good at this.
Oh yeah?
Because I don't have my feet on the desk, but my feet are on the window-sill behind the desk. Every time we're doing this podcast, that's where my feet are.
That's so
because
funny.
if I don't have them up, I can't stay still.
I have a little stool on the ground that my feet have to sit on because my legs
that's because you're short.
I was just gonna say my legs are so short, but if I let them like sit on the ground, then I can't stop wiggling because it's so uncomfortable. So yeah, my feet are on a step stool. Anyway, I don't have a power posture when I'm talking to you, I guess. The expansive hands spread on desk and the expansive upright sitting postures led to a greater sense of power than a constricted posture for both Americans and East Asians. In contrast, the expansive feet on desk pose led to greater power activation and action orientation for Americans, but not East Asians. East Asians in the expansive feet on desk pose showed less power activation and action orientation than Americans in this pose, as this pose is the least consistent of the 3 with East Asian cultural norms of modesty, humility, and restraint.
That makes sense. My guess is if you put your feet on the desk in an East Asian country, you are showing a lot of disrespect.
That's what I would think too. That would be my assumption for sure. Yeah.
So in conclusion, Lauren, the way you present yourself affects the way that you feel. If you are feeling down, try pulling your shoulders back, chest out, chin up, hands on hips. We'll have a link in the comment or in the comment section to the Wonder Woman from 1984, I think it is, pose. Yep. Hands on hips, chest out, shoulders back, chin up. That's Amy Cuddy's #1 power pose.
Yeah, I feel like as soon as you say Wonder Woman, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do.
Oh, nice. I did not.
Oh,
I don't think I've ever seen that movie.
Well, like Superman does it too. Like
that is true. Superman does the exact same
Superman
pose.
Or Wonder Woman. Just imagine yourself as one of those two, and you got the power posing. But I mean, whether it causes a change to your hormones is really irrelevant because the studies are conclusive that it makes the power posing, or it makes the poser feel better and more powerful if you're doing this Wonder Woman or Superman.
Yes, it gives you confidence going into your stressful situation. So a challenge is, if you have a stressful situation coming up, strike your best Wonder Woman pose and hold it for a minute before you go, and then crush whatever situation is stressing you out.
Go crush it. I love it.
Great job today, Lauren.
You too, Travis. This was fun.
This was fun. Thank you for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
And, well, I guess I was going to say Merry Christmas, but this will be released after Christmas, so happy holidays. I hope your holidays were great. Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and are getting benefits from our content.
If your life is improving in part due to the information in this podcast, we would greatly appreciate you sharing the episode with your family and friends on social media and leaving us a review so we can continue to reach more people and improve the health and happiness of the community at large.
Thanks again, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast.